What is up, guys? Welcome to GuildGab episode 42. Today we are going to be talking about the recent betas and the stress test. We had a World vs. World stress test. We had an entire weekend of the Revenant anywhere in Guild Wars 2, as well as, I just lost my train of thought. What? Stronghold! What? That's what I was going to think. We had an entire weekend. We had an entire weekend of Stronghold, and we're going to talk about the newest and last legend that was revealed for the Revenant, Shiro Tagachi. I said for the Revenant. Last, people are going to say, there's one more! That's for the Elite Specialization, which is going to be called something else. Alright, and Golem Rush is going to be a thing in World vs. World, so we're going to talk about that too. So, first, I'm going to introduce everyone. I am your host, AuroraPeachy, and today we have Akasaurus Rex, RPG Shack, and Inks.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Nice to see you.
What's up, guys?
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, Alex. You just went to America.
I went to America.
America.
America. Freedom. Yeah.
Brought back some freedom.
Brought back some freedom. Look.
Did you bring some freedom fries?
Yeah. I do. Look. I have little green strips of freedom
on
my desk.
Oh, nice.
I have $4 worth of freedom left.
Nice.
Worth of freedom.
Ow. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, so obviously, while I was away, it did mean that I couldn't participate in said stress test.
Right. Let's talk about that first, because that happened right after last week's GuildGab. So last week's GuildGab, we kind of got to speculate on what we thought it was going to be like, and then we got to play it. I know Inks, you and I are the only ones here that got to play it. By the way, guys, Corvus is having some family issues right now, so send him your love and wish him luck and all the best. And we love you. We love you, Corvus. Hope everything turns out okay. So the World vs. World stress test. I'm not a big World vs. World player, so I had trouble analyzing it from that standpoint. But the maps were huge. The maps were absolutely gigantic and beautiful. And it was... I found that I tried to run around the entire map, and there was a lot of different kinds of terrain and different kinds of art styles throughout the entire map. It was not like the current Borderlands where it's all kind of the same theme. It was like themes from throughout the entire game. And so being a PvE player, that's kind of what I focused on, and I tried to focus on like the artwork and trying to look at that part of it. So that was the biggest thing that I noticed, was not only was it huge, there was cliffs and valleys, and the terrain and paths it was crazy. Like, this map is going to take a long time to learn all of the little nooks and crannies. But I hope that gives World vs. World players a lot of diversity and a lot of different fun ways to play, and will keep them entertained for a long time. So that's kind of like my summary. What did you think, Inks?
Yeah, so I definitely think the map, at least for my personal opinion, my personal play style, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Like Peachy, currently I don't spend a ton of time in World vs. World. Over the years, I've become much more of a seasonal player. When the game first launched, I belonged to, or shortly after launch, I belonged to a World vs. World guild for a while. And during then, I played a lot of World vs. World, but unless it's seasons, I don't participate nearly as much, and when I do, it's mostly as a roamer. But the map is gigantic. It's beautiful, like Aurora was saying. There are a lot of different mechanics going on in the map. I do think that there was definitely some valid criticism from some players about the number of like NPC mobs and such. Some of the more die-hard World vs. World players don't like a ton of them, because then you can rally off of them, or your enemies can rally off them after you've like downed a player or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And it feels a little, I don't want to say cheaty, but it feels a little bit unrewarding for you to down a player and then have him rally off of RAM or whatever.
Yeah.
On top of that, a number of the NPCs had a lot of like immobilize or slows, or like soft CCs that could be kind of annoying.
Yeah. So if you've got like kind of like a 2-second daze or something like that, that's just kind of hanging around and just can slow you up and separate you from a Zerg and.
Right. But the map is larger than the Borderlands we currently have. There are a lot of nice details. I think the center map mechanic is rather interesting, and I think in the long run, it's going to dissuade larger blobs or larger Zergs of players. You still will be able to run around with a fairly decent-sized group, but because the map is so big, if you want to control all of it or if you want to contest a number of points, then I think you're going to have to split up the Zerg some more. And personally, for me, I think that's good. There's also a lot of like narrow corridors or narrow like causeways and stuff, which is a little better. I think, at least personally, I think it's a little better for roamers. It does allow some Zerg busting moves as well. So that was a lot of fun to see. As far as the stress test goes, I think there was an unintentional, it wasn't a bug necessarily, but I think there was an unintentional option for you to switch servers. So after Peachy's group rolled a number of us, some people
I was probably
figured this.
Not in the group.
Some of these people figured out very quickly you could switch servers, and so they left like Anvil Rock, which we were kind of outmatched to begin with. But I was wondering, like, I'm playing along and I'm streaming, and I didn't realize, but at one point we were outnumbered very quickly. And I'm like, are people logging off the game? How are we outnumbered? I don't understand.
So were they all just like switching to Blackgate or something?
They were. I don't know which. Like they were switching to the other two servers because I think they were a little more evenly matched with one another. But I found out at the very end that was happening, and so at the very end I switched over so I could see the center event, because Blackgate was not letting me in the center of the map for more than like 2 seconds at a time before I got found and crushed.
Yeah. So how did the central event how did that actually play out? Did it play out how ArenaNet were expecting? Because what they want, does it act as that kind of more soft reset than Edge of the Mists has, where instead of just blanket resetting the map, whoever at the end, it essentially just blows all of the gates open, doesn't it? And it's a bit of a mad scramble and you have to start again.
Well, I think it works well in the sense that you did have to... I did see a lot of people splitting up when they got to the center so that they could kill the dinosaurs and take it back to the various buckets to collect in. My server never... I don't think my server ever won the center, so I didn't really get to see the how effective the weapon was against gates and such. Somebody else maybe could answer that better. But I certainly, when I did get to the center and that event was going on, the event does last for quite a while. And I did see people split up into smaller groups to try and complete it as quickly as possible. So, that is a positive step in the right direction as far as the center event.
I actually never did the center event. I mean, I went to the
Really?
center. The center of the map was actually one of my favorite parts because it was like the jungle. Its theme was like the Maguma jungle, and it had the dinosaurs. And one of the coolest things is we got to see. Sorry to kind of interrupt you, Wings. We got to see some of the new animations of the dinosaurs, and there's one that gets on the ground and rolls and steamrolls over you, and it was so cool. Like the first time I saw that, I was like, "What is it doing?" It was so cool. But yeah, I never did the event there.
I did it at the very end. I caught the tail end of it, so I did get to kill some of the dinosaurs and get to deposit, all the energy thing that you get from it. So, there were, some people are asking about water and stuff. There are a couple tiny pools of water, but there's a nice little surprise in one of the pools of water, like Josh was teasing. That was very fun, but there's not you're really not going to do a lot of underwater combat, if any at all, on the map. It's not all deserty and dry necessarily. There is vegetation and there's various degrees of desert, so it doesn't all look the same landscape. It is very different and semi-diverse, but there isn't a lot of underwater-ish stuff there.
So in terms of like the three main areas, did you have access to the entirety of the map, like the desert part, the fiery lavery bit, the undead kind of meta events and those kind of things? So you had access to all three of these big. It was like there was the Earth Keep, the Fire Keep, and Wind. Yeah. So did you get to kind of experience any of those like tier 3 effects? You know, whether I think is it the wind one, you don't take any falling damage when you jump off the side of cliffs or something.
There's little like altars that you go up to, and you like commune there, and you get a buff. And then I got those, but I think the only mechanic that I got to experience was traveling through the lava pools, which is basically just a teleport thing. There's not really an animation for it. But at one point, our team had the fire keep, and so everyone's like, into the lava pool! And so you see everybody like jumping into the lava, and then we like teleport to another part of the map. So that was pretty cool. That whole area was very cool. It's like this very dark, like stone castle, and there's like literal walls of lava. Like it's just really cool. The design of it is very cool.
Yeah. There's something that Ink said that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit. How similar is it to Edge of the Mist? Obviously, I think it's fairly obvious that the Edge of the Mist's map was the kind of the tester for where we're currently going with World v World. But I know Ink's mentioned that there were a few World v World players who weren't that keen on it. Is that because they're starting to bring a bit more of the PvE aspect into the World v World maps? Because from what I remember seeing of the original presentation back in March, we're looking at kind of a lot more, there's more boss events, there's more kind of control events that aren't directly to do with fighting other Zergs and that kind of thing.
I mean, there is definitely some PvE elements to this map. That center event is basically sort of a PvE event. I mean, yes, you can and should be fighting each other so you can win the event, but the event itself is tied to killing dinosaurs, picking an item up and taking it back to a bucket, or taking it back to a merchant. I mean, there are some hero points. There's a very cool hero point on this new map where you fight a wyvern, actually, which was very fun. And like I said, about the NPCs that are kind of scattered throughout the map, some more core or hardcore or dedicated World vs. World players were complaining that in some areas there were too many. And I think that is some valid criticism. I know that World vs. World players are all about, they want to fight each other and they want some open spaces to do that. Which, by the way, I feel like there were plenty of open spaces to still have massive fights while having lots of tight corridors as well. I mean, I guess you can view some of the towers like the Necromancer and stuff. Those were those are kind of like PvE fights as well, and those bosses were a little more interesting, I think.
They were.
But when you have a Zerg of 30 and 40 people, it kind of breaks the fight apart. The fight breaks down, and it's not nearly as interesting as it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
So there are definitely some PvE elements. I don't think it's as PvE as Edge of the Mists. I mean, one of the problems with Edge of the Mists, it is a little too PvE heavy in Edge of the Mists, but one of the other reasons that it's so karma trainy is that it doesn't count for anything. It doesn't. If you win, supplies drop into World vs. World, but the main World vs. World players don't care as much because it doesn't influence the outcome of the actual match. It doesn't count for PPT and such.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't affect your server rankings, does it, or anything like that?
Right.
It's a good karma. It's fantastic karma and experience train, Edge of the Mists. But the way that people play Edge of the Mists now, or at least what I kind of seen, is that you very rarely run into other Zergs, and you kind of someone keeps an eye on the map as you rotate around and.
Right.
I wasn't really like I said, I'm not a World vs. World player, but the gist that I got from the Zerg that I was trying to follow around, I got lost a lot, was that as I played for a couple, maybe I think 2 or 3 hours of it, and as it went on, I kind of got the vibe that people were like, well, maybe we shouldn't just be a giant Zerg. Maybe we should send a group over here to capture this, and then a group over here to capture this. Like, as they learned the map, these mechanics kind of naturally came out, and they kind of naturally, came up with these tactics as they were playing the map. So it's going to be really interesting. I hope that hardcore World versus World players can kind of make the transition from what they're used to, because they're so used to their meta, and it works for them. So I hope that they can transition into this new meta easily, and I know there's some people who weren't happy with it, but hopefully over time, as they learn the new map and learn that maybe this is a better way of doing it, that I don't have a lot of experience in World versus World, so that's about all I can do is just hope for them to,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the keeps add a fun flavor. Lava Hounds need to be balanced a little more. They're a little too strong, I think. And besides the extra NPCs on the map, which, I mean, ArenaNet can tone down, they can thin the herd out, so to speak. Yeah. I don't think it was any more PvE oriented than the current map really is. There are some extra mechanics at the keep. You do have these 3 different shrines to upgrade the keep's abilities, and those were kind of fun to fight over. They are PvE events because there's enemies there you have to kill, and then you capture it just like you would a camp or something. But the shrines really aren't any different from a camp. They're easier to capture than a camp. They're slightly easier to capture, but the mechanic itself is not that different from a camp. So it's like adding extra camps onto the map that, instead of delivering supply, are points that you need to hold in order to make your keep more powerful for the defender. And I thought that worked well. I thought that was a lot of fun. For example, like, we held Firekeep at one point, but we only had 1 shrine, so only part of Firekeep was working. We couldn't travel through the lava, and we couldn't summon the lava dogs. And I know at one point we foolishly tried to get the other 2 shrines back so that we could activate those things, and there were definitely people there defending them and fighting us off and saying, no, you're not getting this because our greater force is going to come in and now take the keep from you so that you don't have all these advantages to help you defend. So I mean, it needs more testing. We need to get much larger, well-balanced forces in there, but it was a lot of fun. And more of a PvE kind of notation, but there were some new creatures in the map that were all very fun and brilliant, I think. There was a tiger skin for those who like rangers. Not a pet that you could summon, but I'm hoping that we'll get a juvenile tiger, maybe.
I want tigers. I want tigers.
Yeah, the tiger was very cool. There were different dinosaurs that all had different kind of things. There was this, I forget his name, but there was a scaled dinosaur who was like on speed. He would run back and forth across your character, causing a ton of damage.
Dude, that thing that kept disappearing. At least the one I ran into, kept disappearing and reappearing over here, and he was over here. Oh my god, that thing was crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
it was bugged.
More of a PvE monster thing, but it was still really fun, and I enjoyed that sort of thing. So
yeah. Do you think that the next time we see World vs. World is going to be an open beta for everyone who pre-ordered Heart of Thorns?
I hope so. I hope so.
Same.
Oh no! Oh, it was invitation only, of course, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. The World vs. World was. Yeah. What we're going to talk about next, which was the Revenant and Stronghold beta weekend, that was open to everybody who pre-ordered Heart of Thorns. Oh, I see sad face.
So I got my brother gets married, and I'm like, oh, I have to go see him. Sit home.
Can you reschedule the wedding? I have a beta.
Yeah.
Better
Jesus,
than release
dude.
weekend.
There'd be words had. It was. But so yeah, we got the Revenant. We got the Revenant with Staff and Ventari, didn't we? Mm-hmm.
That was the first time, and we got to play it anywhere in the game, which I thought was the coolest part.
Yeah. The thing that I've kind of picked up at the moment is that the burn stacking with Guardians is beyond insane.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
With Revenants and Guardians.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like people are Did someone manage to break the burn cap or something? There's a video floating
Really?
about an
They hit the
insane
burn
amount
cap.
of burns.
Yeah, they hit the burn cap. It was with
Which is
like
what?
1,500 stacks.
Oh my god!
Yeah. So what they were doing was I think they had like 6 guardians applying burning and laying down the fields, and then they had 9 revenants using their Malik's displace skill, using it so that it would push the enemies through the burn fields like multiple times. So it would stack up, and then another revenant would push it back.
Oh
Stack
my
up
god.
again, and they would, the revenants kept basically ping-ponging the enemy through the burn fields to make it stack up extremely high. I mean, that's some crazy coordination as well, right? You're talking about 9 revenants and 6 guardians, I think it was.
Oh my god.
But
it was pretty bananas.
yeah, so someone in chat is saying the only reason that they really managed to hit the cap was due to the PvP golem porting. So
Yeah.
what would happen is they would lay the burn field, and the revenant would push it out, and then because it was a PvP golem, it would snap back into place. And when it did that, it would stack burns again. So
Start it off again, yeah.
yeah, it's still pretty interesting. Still pretty interesting.
So how did Ventari play? How does Ventari and staff play in the game?
So staff was my favorite weapon. It doesn't really do any damage, but it was my favorite weapon. The animations were definitely my favorite. I did find some uses for Ventari, and Colin he made a very important kind of pre-speech on points of interest last Friday. And that was that, Revenant is getting these tools, like Ventari, like Jalis, but there's not a ton of content in Guild Wars 2 currently that really screams out for you to use this legend there. In other words, a legend is not going to be overly useful in a number of the content that currently exists in Guild Wars 2. I did find some places where he did excel, but generally speaking, not going to excel a whole ton with the current content. Heart of Thorns, however, and whatever challenging content ends up becoming, or whatever it is, Ventari will be a lot more useful. And mechanics like Taunt and Jalis with Taunt will be a lot more useful. So I guess that's the silver lining that you can take away from the Ventari legend. That being said, he was a lot of fun to play in the open world where people are taking lots of damage and there's healing that you can do. I feel like healing is not... it's rewarding enough personally, but it's not rewarding enough game mechanic-wise.
Yeah.
Triple Trouble Worm, I know that ATT used Revenants to do the egg blocking, because you can put that... You can put
you can put the tablet over
worm.
Yeah.
And that worked amazingly. It was very effective, very easy to egg block and keep things going with that.
Does that does that now block everything entirely? Because I remember they made a change to it that because people using Swirling Winds on Ellies, is it Swirling Winds on? It's a lightning skill for Elementalists that would block the eggs coming out. So they changed it that there'd always be 2 no matter what that would make it through. So does it now block everything?
Well, so the way it works is this: you're not supposed to be able to ever block husks.
Yeah.
So he'll still spit husks out, but you could always, or you were supposed to always, be able to block the grub eggs. Now, the grub eggs are the real problem at Worm because they're hard to kill, they do a ton of damage, and they can distract you from the overall goal of the worm. So when you egg block, which is essential to success at Worm, it's the grub eggs that you're really blocking. And
yeah,
there are many classes that can block those eggs, but Ventari had a very easy time of it. Positioning of the tablet is very important, but he had a very easy time once you were in proper position. And I took Ventari over to Quaddle, and at least in phase 1, before he starts transitioning, before the transitioning phases where he is, he's doing a lot of damage on the stack, and he has these I don't know exactly what to call them. I want to say they're not tentacles, but the arms come up, and generally
it's the fingers.
Right, the fingers. So generally, Guardians or Mesmers would block those. Well, Ventari's tablet, once again, was very good at blocking, as well as the Ventari tablet did a good job of cleansing people. Not a total cleanse, but it did a pretty good job of cleansing the Zerg as well. So it was a lot of fun using the tablet in those situations. Very niche situations, mind you, but regardless, it was effective and fun.
Yeah, in chat, I did not get much sleep last night. If anyone noticed that. So I just want to throw in real quick too, just because we're talking about the like the way that the Revenant is playing out. Because I heard a fascinating thing that Colin was saying that he clarified or reiterated ArenaNet's position on the whole idea of getting rid of the Holy Trinity, which I found fascinating, because he actually said that they never intended to like get rid of the Holy Trinity, but they had a different perspective on this. Did you guys hear about this?
Yeah, that was on Points of Interest.
Yeah,
right. I mean, I think
I found really fascinating.
To me, the core idea behind it is, I think Colin he's either said this before, he said it on Points of Interest on Friday, that the way that the classes are built, you don't want to feel like you're tied down into one particular role. And unfortunately, that has created, to some extent, a fairly kind of plateau of just DPS characters, where you can, at the moment in Guild Wars 2, you can pretty much DPS anything down and clear a few conditions, and you'll buy it with a few exceptions, like obviously like Triple Trouble and I guess Tequatl as well. You're by and large there with it, obviously excluding World v World and PvP as well. But I think that bringing at least some aspects of the Trinity back, so that you're getting more of a healer class into it, is a pretty cool idea. I guess that I think one of the things they talked about is they still wanted the damage, but they wanted support and they wanted defense, which is when they originally kind of said we're getting rid of the original Trinity or whatever. But I think by and large, bringing some aspect of the tank DPS heal back in will do a lot to vary up the game, especially with the current specialization changes. Because one of the biggest bones of contention, as I'm sure we all know, is that we've sacrificed build diversity for build viability. And while I think that's a perfectly fine trade-off, because there's a lot of crap that we weren't using in the trait system, kind of slimming that down and not introducing new ways to play classes and new ways to play different portions of the game could potentially kind of choke the experience for everybody. So bringing back in some of these old classic tried and tested things from, like EverQuest and Warcraft and all the rest of it, I think could potentially be a really cool idea if it's done right.
Yeah, because like I found it neat that I believe he was saying that their intention that I think they're starting to get to with the Revenant was to kind of make it so that every class could fulfill pretty much all of those major key roles equally well. And I think that's been their like difficulty of like trying to make like say like a light armor Mesmer or Elementalist like tank, as well as say like a Guardian, which would be a natural fit for that, and then to try to make them all do that, I think is a real noble goal to strive towards. And it sounds like the Revenant is really trying to do that, especially with like the specific legends that he has. They're really pushing those aspects to say this is the healing tree, and so it'll be interesting.
They're making it very obvious with the Revenant how they this legend is for this and this legend. They even say in their blog posts like, here's Shiro, here's your DPS. Like, it's like just plain as day, because you're absolutely right. Colin did say that it was never their intention to do away with the Trinity, but it was their intention to make any class be able to fill any role. And now some classes are naturally better at some roles than others. That's your warrior is always going to be a better DPS or tank than a healer. That's just the nature of it. But and I think with the Revenant, it's just they're kind of making it in our faces where here you use this legend for this role, you use this legend for this role, and then with the Revenant you can even swap in the middle of battle. So the only problem is, do you think that because the Revenant is so, like Ventari is so obviously a healer, like, do you think that the Revenant is too role spec'd? Like, do you think that people are going to be saying, okay, we want a Shiro Revenant, and not where, you know, you can kind of be whatever you want in at least a casual dungeon group?
I think people kind of, in a casual dungeon group, maybe. I think in terms of efficient clearing of dungeons, people kind of do that anyway, and they expect you to run particular builds, like I don't know, like your DPS Guardian or your Phalanx Strength Warrior or your Icebow Ellie, or you know, any number of the remaining meta things that I haven't mentioned there. But I think when push comes to shove, people are certainly going to want the Shiro DPS aspect, or the Shiro legend on their Revenant if you're going to take a Revenant into dungeons, simply because, you know, more damage means you clear it faster. And
yeah, it's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, just look, if you think like you can take you take a Reaper, you take a Chronomancer, you take a Shiro legend Revenant, and then you take a couple of maybe a bit more supporty things, that's a lot of damage, I think. But I don't know. I mean, to me, there's always been the idea that you should be able to play whatever you want, and having someone coming along going, oh, all right, I want to play Ventari and Malix or whatever. I think people should be free to do that, even though it's not going to be that popular, potentially.
I mean, I ran 2 dungeons with the Revenant over the weekend, without Shiro, obviously, because we didn't have him. It is painfully slow, I will say that much. Your DPS is really bad, and this creates a... I have something to say about, you know, the Revenant in general, but you're going... If you want to do dungeons, you know, hot aside, all that content aside, whatever that ends up being, if you want to do the core world stuff that we currently have, Shiro is a must. So the problem becomes, instead of, you know, I can take Jalis and Malix, I can take Malix and Ventari, it's going to be I'll take Shiro plus one of the other 3. And besides the problems with limited utilities, I think that creates even less viable diversity for the Revenant, which goes against what we see in other classes. That doesn't mean that this won't change and can't change. I think it will. I mean, ArenaNet knows, right? They listen to our feedback. I think there's a ton of feedback that came out of last weekend. As far as the Revenant itself, it's interesting because there's a misconception within the community, I think, that these high-level dungeon groups like the DNTs and the RTs, and there's other guilds out there that I am less aware of, but these guys who do these speed clears, who create these meta builds, who kind of semi-influence the way that other people foresee the meta itself, their builds are an all-in-one solution. And on the outside of it, the outer shell, it looks like it's just this DPS kill squad. But the actual truth is, all of those are not so much tanky, but they're DPS and support all in one. And if you take the Guardian, for example, he has blinds, and he has Aegis, and he has lots of tools to help protect himself as well as protect the group while doing the most damage he can do without sacrificing that support. And all the other party members need to bring the same thing to the table. Thieves, for example, bring things like stealth and blind and so forth. And I think that's often missed by players. They just see the raw numbers, they see the raw DPS that these guys do because it's so damage-focused and heavy, and because you're doing so much damage, the bosses generally don't have a lot of times to fulfill their own mechanics, so you don't really get to see those mechanics fleshed out. The Revenant is interesting in the sense that rather than mix all of those into one, like current classes do, he highlights specific roles. You want support? Here's Ventari. You want to be tanky? Here's Jalis. You want condition damage? Here is Malix. And then DPS, of course, is Shiro. And by mixing these, you're supposed to get your all-in-one package. Now there are some problems currently with that, and that's why Revenant still needs balancing. That's why this is beta. And but it's interesting because the Revenant highlights those things much stronger than other classes do, and I think that's why people are paying much more attention to the Revenant as far as, oh, he doesn't perform well, or he sucks, or he doesn't do this, or he doesn't do that, and it's because it's highlighting in your face so much more. You want to do support, you have to take Ventari. You don't have to, but you take Ventari, right?
Right.
There are some other little intricacies and details about the Revenant that make it feel that way. But basically, the point of this whole long thing is that it's much more highlighted for the players than other classes are. So it's easier to see.
I would wonder then, because my wonder then is, will all the other classes and professions be basically becoming like the Revenant, or do you think they would try to force the Revenant into what the current classes are, and as far as being very, very, very soft as far as those niches? Because it kind of feels like ArenaNet wants to elevate all of the other professions up to have their trait lines be very specific. Like for the Ellie, for instance, their Earth trait will very much be the tanking spec for an Earth Ellie. They'll just keep making those things more and more distinct. So that's what I was kind of curious about.
I think that,
which way they'd be going.
I think that in some way the way that they're dealing with the elite specializations kind of covers that, because just like you can kind of switch between the legends on the Revenant, as long as you're out of combat, you can switch the specializations around, and as time goes on and we get more expansions, we're going to get more elite specializations. So we're going to have that ability whenever we're out of combat just to kind of switch those switch those elite specializations in and out. So we get access to new skills, we get new access to different styles of play.
Right.
That's kind of my take on it. I think the Revenant at the moment is a very unique class. It certainly stands apart from how all of the other classes work, probably because it's a class it's been developed in an entirely different way since the game was launched. But I think that it would be a very, very slippery slope to start changing the way that particular classes work, based on how the Revenant is now, or perhaps if we even end up getting an entirely new set of classes in subsequent expansions, going, hey, we did this with the Revenant, let's kind of repeat that. I think that the Revenant has a very unique kind of gimmick to it, that it's the legends. But if you start introducing other classes and you just go, oh, you can do this unique switch thing as well, it's like, well, but that was the Revenant. This was its kind of hook. This was its cool thing. And even with something like the Reaper for the Necromancer, the Reaper's gimmick is chill and massive damage, and that sits perfectly in an elite specialization. And to kind of stop bringing that out into the way that the core class functions, I think would be a very big mistake, especially now that we're 3 years into the lifespan of the game. To radically change the way that the classes work, I think it'd be a bit daft.
Do you think the elites might actually try to be that, not just be a big DPS, or one will, this elite for warrior is super tank or something? Or
that's what I was thinking as well, and I think that's what Alex was saying, and maybe not so cut and dry as the Reaper is supposed to be DPS, but it's got that condition as well. It's not just one role. Whereas almost for the Revenant, like Ventari, you can spec it differently, but it kind of has one role. Shiro's going to have one role.
Right.
But you can switch in combat much easier. And then the Revenant is going to have an elite specialization. So, what's that going to be? What's that going to be spec'd? Is that going to maybe be a blend of two of them? Right, so...
The problem the Revenant currently faces before we move on to Shiro. The one of the problems, there are a few, but one of the problems that the Revenant currently faces is that other classes, current core classes from the original game of Guild Wars 2 were this mixed ball of wax. And elite specializations are going to give them a more specified task or thing that they can do. And the Revenant, because he was developed much later, is a lot like a bunch of elite specializations on top of another elite specialization. So instead of being this mixed ball of wax, he is specialized throughout. Everything feels like a specialization. And this, unfortunately, so far, has a negative effect on the amount of diversity that the class actually has. On the surface, it appears like lots of diversity, because I can be a tank healer, I can be a tank DPS, I can be a conditioned tank, whatever the case is. But the truth is that actually limits your diversity more than actually giving you the diversity that players seem to want from these classes.
I think so, yeah. I think we're going to talk about this with Shiro in a minute. And obviously I didn't get to play Ventari, but it seems like that the weapon sets that the Revenant has, they're very specifically aligned to one particular legend. So you've got your hammer for Jalis, your axe mace for Malix. I assume staff works pretty well with Ventari, like you were saying a bit earlier, because it doesn't do that much damage. So it kind of focuses on that support aspect. And from what we've kind of seen of Shiro today, it's just damage, damage, damage with dual swords.
Right.
So Shiro,
let's just move on to Shiro. Dual swords.
yeah.
I
got up my kimono for him.
So cool. Shiro Tagachi is like the best. Like, he's better than Varish, he's better than Abaddon, he's better than Vizier Kilbron, spoilers. And he's just so cool. Like having for the people who don't know the story about Shiro, he was Emperor Asigyan's, I think that's his name, elite kind of bodyguard, and then like he started being whispered to in his mind by things like, "Ooh, the Emperor's going to try." Mordremoth confirmed Guild Wars 1. And he started getting these whispers in his head that the Emperor was going to try and kill him at this harvest festival. And so he was like, "No, I'm not going to have that." And so, being the good, loyal, faithful bodyguard that he is, he shanked the Emperor. But then...
Shagged the Emperor? What?
Shanked.
Shanked.
Listen up. And so then the Luxons and the Kurziks, who are like the two kind of house factions in Cantha confirmed, they all kind of like banded together to try and kill Shiro, but then their two champions were kind of left, and then they killed him. And thankfully they managed to do it, but not before Shiro unleashed his death curse and froze the Jade Sea into like just a desert of solid jade. And then he comes back, raising the Afflicted and the Shirokan to try and take over the world, or come back to life, or something.
I think it was just come back to life. Yeah, he just wanted to live.
Yeah, I think his motivation kind of evaded me towards the end of Guild Wars 1. I think he needed to kill Kizu or something to come back to life, because he was the current emperor. And Togo laid down his life, and Togo,
friggin' Togo.
And Togo had royal blood, which actually is what he needed, and it brought him back to life.
Yeah. And,
there was a great... oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, all I know is it was of all the final boss battles of Guild Wars 1, I had the most trouble with Shiro. It was for me, it was always the most annoying, whether I went in there solo or with a group or whatever. It was always the most annoying battle. I had the hardest time defeating Shiro. He would send you to like the Nega world, and like you'd have to like run your way back out.
I thought that was so easy.
Really?
I thought Shiro was a pushover. Yeah.
Oh wow.
We did him like the first time I did him. We mastered him, but we were like 8 ritualists, and Ritualists are so overpowered. I love them. And yeah, and he turned up briefly again in Nightfall as an arbitrary boss, because I think like Abaddon had summoned him to do something. I
can't. I don't know.
Can't remember.
Shiro, get
I don't
your
know.
ass over here.
He was
can't
summoned.
remember.
Yeah, he was summoned in. He was part of the end of the Nightfall campaign.
Yeah,
As a boss.
and I'd kind of lost my passion for Nightfall because it got so damn hard. I was just sick of it. It's like, here's my moment. It's like, I don't care anymore, man. I don't care.
Torment.
Just die in a fire. And and now here he is. Which it's really interesting because the Revenant isn't. I love this kind of suggested moral ambiguity that the Revenant has, because we don't have a full collection of kind of goody two shoes, do we? We don't have Rurik and
No, not at
Chalice
all.
and Ventari.
Oh, two nasties.
We've got we've got Malix, who's an absolute douche biscuit, and and Shiro, who was like this crazy murderer psychopath guy, and like he's really, really brutal. Shiro.
Well, and to be fair, Chalice isn't exactly someone you want to cuddle up with at night next to the fire.
Well, no.
It's a dwarf.
Ventari is really the only softie in the whole group of them. So, I mean,
Sweet
Chalice
little
wasn't
Ventari.
evil, but you know,
He was hardcore.
He was- Yeah.
yeah.
But
Actually, I found him. Sorry. I was just going to throw in a quick thing. Is that if you're like me and didn't know a lot about Shiro, Wooden Potatoes has a really nice 101 for Shiro lore video. That got me up to pace on all of his history and everything. So I'll throw that out for everyone to throw
Yeah,
out.
for sure.
Which is really cool to just find out about the guy. So that was kinda
Absolutely,
cool.
and I hope that, if you're even slightly interested in the lore, you'll go back, and if you haven't played Guild Wars 1, or even if you have, like me, there's a lot that I've forgotten, go back and read up on these Revenant legends and who they were and what they meant to the first game and to the history of Tyria. There's a reason that they're, coming back now, because they were such significant characters. And that's, before we get into the technical aspect of what Shiro is bringing, just lore-wise, what does this mean? Like you said, we've got, a goody two-shoes, we've got Chalice, who's, kind of, like you said, you don't want to cuddle up with them exactly, and then you've got, some psychopaths. It's like, and then if for the elite spec, if we get Glint, that's another kind of for the good side, but
prospectively,
ambiguity sort of.
if it would be possible that we might get Glint, just
Shimmershanks. It's gonna be Uncle Shimmershanks.
do you think that the Revenant legends are going to, how big of a role do you think they're going to play in the story of Heart of Thorns? We know that they've said that walking around the world, using your skills and stuff, these legends are going to be talking to you. They're not just there to use their skills and then be done. The Revenant is almost going to have this multiple personality disorder almost, because he's going to have people talking to him in his head. Is Shiro going to come out at a really bad time and say something nasty and ruin, diplomacy for us? If whether we're playing as a Revenant
that would be
or
really
if
cool.
Ritlock is in the story with us.
Yeah, I think for that to happen to everybody, Ritlock would have to be there, because then it depends on everybody playing a Revenant, and rather if you want to run through with your original class. But having the legends actually take part in the story and influencing main characters, so you never know. Fallon might be the second Revenant. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? If Fallon was the second Revenant, maybe.
I never even
Fallon's
considered
up to
that.
I think
Fallon is definitely up to something.
I think a lot of the lore or dialogue that we're going to get from these legends will be idle dialogue as you're standing around, or as you use skills or something like that. It's going to, I think that's what we're going to get. I wish it was more detailed than that, but I'm not sure that it's going to be.
I agree.
Yeah, it's probably just gonna be voice emotes. But I mean, still, for Peachy, what were you saying is that, for the actual in-game story, it would be cool if Ritlock in the story as the story Revenant character, I would kill to hear Ritlock just have conversations with these legends, because like Ritlock having like a beep off with like Shiro or Jalis and Ventari and everyone would just be priceless. I mean,
Well,
I'd love to have him.
It would.
the thing is that they've already said that how Ritlock became a Revenant is going to be integral to the Heart of Thorn's story. Because at the moment we just know that
Cool.
at the moment we just know that Ritlock is just kind of like, yo, what's up? I'm a Revenant now, and that's pretty much that's pretty much all we got in the last beta. And I think you could use, especially Ventari as well, because of everything that we've had to do with Sylvari and the dragon minions and the grove and all the rest of it. Having Ventari come into play in how the Sylvari deal with the fact that they're now, they now know that they're the children of Mordremoth, essentially. That could be a really kind of juxtaposed aspect between how the Sylvari deal with now they know what they are and how they deal with how they've been kind of brought up in the dream. And having Shiro and Shiro could kind of whisper insanity in his ear, Malix could whisper just pure evil, and Jalis could be there as like the steadfast kind of, no, hold true to yourself, we are the dwarves.
Go get a drink.
I think because one of the interesting things is that there's supposed to be this way that you can find your own way through the story through the choices that you make. So, there's the we had some of those aspects in the in the original personal story where you could like choose a course of action and it played out in a couple of different particular ways. Having conversations with these legends as they come out of the mists to determine how a particular scenario plays out. So, at the beginning of the beta you can either go with Larenthir or you can go with whatever the Char person is, even though you can only go with Larenthir in the beta at the moment. But having that kind of tree aspect there of the story, that will shape your story as you move through the game. You don't have you do have the option to go back and replay it after you finish that, but your core story could be with your character that you choose to ignore all kind of the, everything has a right to grow, defend the innocent kind of thing, and just go wholesale slaughter psychopath with Shiro. When you listen to him as you kind of make those decisions. Do you know what I mean when in the story when you go, oh, should we go and catch the apple thieves or should we go and set fire to a village?
That's a hard decision.
Yeah.
I'm looking really forward to making those decisions as my characters that I take through. Like, obviously I'm taking my Guardian through Heart of Thorn's story first. That's what I'm going to experience with. That's my main. And in my head, like, I have this headcanon where she's lawful good, so she's going to pick all the good, the good options. But then taking other characters through, and what if someone wants to be just evil and yes, slaughter all Sylvari, it's that I'm really looking forward to that and seeing where those branching paths take us. You
could role play a self-hating Sylvari, couldn't you? You could have a Sylvari Revenant who's sick of his people and just like, yeah, they're all evil and I might be evil. Let's just cleanse the earth of us just to make sure. But Shiro is just completely off tap. It's just like it's very similar to the assassin from Factions, I think, in terms of it sounds very glass cannon-y. You're looking at lots and lots of high damage output, and there's a skill that we saw in the announcement trailer of Ritlock kind of jumping between 3 or 4 different foes and kind of like that shadow step thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Unrelenting Assault, which so it says you shadow step, delivering strikes and gain might each time you strike a foe. So you can chain this up and give yourself might. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and there's definitely some synergy with, one of the complaints about Revenant is lack of synergy with traits, but there's some synergy here with this particular skill, but there's some synergy with, I forget which line it is, but there's a line or two where you can also stack might, so, this allows you to have, it's something that you definitely want is stacking might, so this is a way to do so in combat anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that they actually mentioned, that skill that Ritlock used in
Right.
the trailer. They're like,
Yeah.
that's this skill. It's like,
That's-
that's so cool.
The Shiro class itself.
Ritlock uses Shiro Legend confirmed.
Yeah. The Shiro class itself uses has quite a bit of mobility, which is nice because there were definitely times in the weekend where I felt very slow. So Shiro's going to have a lot of mobility and a lot of quick, fast attacks. A lot like a thief, actually. Not the stealth part, but the shadow stepping and the quick attacks, and so it should be very interesting. I can't wait to get my hands on it and actually play it because the devils are in the details. So there'll be a point of interest show on Friday. I'm very much looking forward to seeing Roy show the class off, as well as go through the trait line and see how all that works.
All the other legends have been really exciting on points of interest once they actually show them off. So Shiro, I think, is going to be like you said, it's going to be fast, high damage. This, I'm really excited to see the skill effects. I didn't play much of the Revenant last weekend, and I don't know. I just didn't have a lot of interest in it because it wasn't finished. We didn't have the last legend, but I can see myself really wanting to try out Shiro. I think it would be really fun. Is there any class that has dual swords? Warrior?
Yes.
Mesmer Warrior. I think.
Warrior.
Mesmer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We now have the final two. Well, we now got the final weapon of the Revenant set as well.
Except underwater.
Yeah,
Except underwater.
it's funny because and I don't know whether maybe this was just a slip or something, but we now know all of the core legends, elite specialization aside. We know all the core legends now. That gives us 4 legends. And we know all of the core weapons as well, minus whatever underwater is. I don't know. Hopefully they talk about underwater, or maybe they'll bring it up on points of interest to clarify a little bit.
I hope
we don't know what the underwater weapon or weapons are, and I assume it would just be one, probably spear. And we don't know how the legends really work underwater, because a lot of their utilities, which might just be placeholder, but a lot of their utilities say that they don't work underwater. So it'll be interesting.
It would be really cool if, like, the legends, when you go underwater, sound like they're underwater. They're
Revenants can't swim.
Revenants can't. That's great. We just dissolve as you run into water. Yeah.
Legendary Quaggan stance. Yes.
Drubert.
Underwater legend.
Thanks for money.
awesome.
No, absolutely not.
Do you
Absolutely.
guys think that we're going to finally get back to the getting to know what the elites are now that we have the 4th?
The other elite specializations,
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
God,
that
I hope so.
I think we'll go back
Get
to the
it
core
out.
classes. I think we're done with Revenant for a little while now. We'll learn about the elite, but probably more towards the end now. I think we're going to learn more about, Druid or Elementalist, Warrior, Thief, one of them. Probably Druid next, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
That would be
Hopefully
my
for
guess.
me, because I want that. Other people definitely
too.
want to see other ones, but yeah, I'm hoping next week we get to see another elite specialization. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm just, like, super curious what the heck the warrior one and the
That too.
Ellie one too, because
Well, we know Ellie
really
is
wanna-
Tempest. And it's speculated they're getting sword, but that's
It's Warhorn apparently.
a
Well,
Warhorn
it's-
now.
or
Yeah.
It's a
Some,
lot of
something changed
crazy
that
that
would
weird
mesh really
speculation.
well.
Yeah, that's a lot of speculation, guys.
Yeah.
That would work really cool though, like a Warhorn for an
is
Ellie.
Such a
That
horrible
sounds
skin.
weird. That sounds
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Because they
Ellie's
can, like,
here,
blow
Warhorn,
for
the
the
ones I've
elements.
talked to did not seem too excited about Warhorn.
No.
No.
I like Warhorns.
That's putting it mildly, isn't it? I had a quick
love
look at Reddit when
Warhorns.
someone found out that it might be Warhorn, and the
Internet exploded.
it was not a favourable reaction.
Well, if you had a choice between a sword and a war horn, which would you choose?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have
Warhorn.
anything against Warhorn, but I mean, main hand sword sounds a lot more fun, right?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Well, Ellie's are already so ranged. That's the thing, and Warhorn would just be more ranged. Whereas if you have sword, you get another very close melee spec. So.
What could you offhand sword with though? Unless they got 5 new.
Well, dagger. You can offhand dagger. You
They
can
got
offhand
focus.
focus.
No, not scepter. Focus and then.
Focus and
What
dagger.
about torch?
Focus and
Did they have
dagger?
torches?
No.
Do they have torches, Ellie's?
No.
No.
That would make
I mean,
sense, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
I mean,
weird because-
maybe an offhand Warhorn makes sense because they don't have a lot of offhand choices, but I think it's
Well,
kind of
they got-
even right now though for them. So.
Yeah.
I'm hoping warriors get double daggers and do some kind of like gladiator like thing. 'Cause
Well, they're only going to get one weapon,
Daggers just feel like it.
so they wouldn't get dual daggers. They would get either main hand or offhand. That's kind of the limitation of these elite specializations. They don't get dual weapons; they just get one.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
main
but-
hand, offhand, or a two-handed weapon.
But they sometimes but like with like the two-handed weapon, they like get the 5 skill sets, and warriors are special, so you know they.
Well,
No,
we know,
but if
well
they-
Mesmer
I
only
don't
got
think-
offhand shield. It didn't
Yeah,
even get a main hand
absolutely.
weapon.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty guaranteed that they did say that they if a character was going to, or if a class was going to get just a main hand or an offhand, not a dual wielded, all 5 skills, that it was going to kind of make up for it. I mean, and Chronomancer is pretty beefy as far as its mechanics. So it's got alacrity, it's got a lot of new mechanics in it. So, it kind of makes up for just having offhand shield as its new weapon. So if Warrior got just... If Warrior just got either a main hand or an offhand... I hope they add a lot of mechanics to Warrior, because personally, Warrior is not fun for me to play, but if they add some kind of mechanic that makes it more exciting... Sorry, I
That
don't
would be
mean to
nice.
offend any Warrior fans, but I'm
love my
really
Warrior.
excited to hear about Warrior.
Warriors can
So-
definitely use a bit more glam rock in their thing because they are pretty stale and rusty. But just like one more thing for the Ellie Warhorn, which I would support. One reason I'll throw it out there because I know like just as Alex was saying, it's not popular. But if you think about it, they're going to still have access to all 4 of their elemental. I'm losing my brain. Attunements. So if you have a Warhorn and if they really kind of max out those 2 abilities to be something really special, you could have some really intense like elemental power coming out of your Warhorn thing. Like I don't know, some kind of freaking giant blast of something for each of the attunements and stuff. It could be.
It makes sense. Yeah,
epic.
it can make sense, but I just think
Right.
it's more
I want it, I want it.
underwhelming than like a sword.
Yeah. Crikey.
Keeper of the Cookie gave us an update in chat, and Roy on Twitter said that the Revenant will get underwater combat. I mean, of course. They just haven't talked about it yet. They're working on system skills and balance amongst other things. So,
Okay.
I mean, I think we all knew that it was going to get underwater. It was just a bit odd we haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there
If
is
that's
that.
an entire
What
point
happened
of
in the
interest,
beta?
I'm going to be annoyed.
When you went underwater as a Revenant, you just
Everything
didn't
was
have any
empty.
You just didn't have any skills.
You swam
God.
really quickly to get back out.
Yeah.
Nice. Run away! Run away!
There was also a blog post about adventures.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
things.
Anybody want to just
I really like
summarize that
those.
very quickly? We're about at the end of the show.
I'm like
Adventures
really
have-
looking forward to
I've
those.
not had
Yeah.
time to read it.
I did.
So-
Yeah,
ahead,
it's they're basically it's going to be a really great form of content that Guild Wars 2 is lacking somewhat. It was always criticized as not having enough repeatable content. So the adventures are going to be these short, challenging, sometimes instances, sometimes not, where you can do like they gave the example of a shooting range within the Maguma jungle. so that you come across some survivors who have made these dummies, and then you basically jump in and you basically start going on a firing range. But it's not just a static firing range. They're actually going to be like this particular one. These dummies are scattered throughout this area, and there's like little running boosts, and you can pick up ammo along the way. So there's going to be a lot of kind of strategy that they're hoping to put into these things. And it's basically a way to like make things like jumping puzzles and more. So there's a lot of potential here. Some adventures could have you fighting certain characters and creatures, and you will also always have the ability to restart your adventure whenever you can, because it's going to be connected to leaderboards. So it's going to be a way to do a competitive form of content to kind of make the world map feel more alive, so that you can kind of come across these things and you can start them whenever you want, as opposed to having to wait for an event to spark up. Because sometimes, as I said, you will be wandering around and the world can feel dead, and especially for new people coming in to be like, oh, this is so boring, nothing's happening, and they may just have come across an area where the event cycle finished, so it hasn't started up yet, whereas the adventures will always be there for you to do whenever you can. So I'm really kind of pumped at what these things can be.
That's great. That's what I took away from it as well, is that, like you said, there's events. A bunch of events could have just ended, or especially when the daily is to go into this map and do events, people just do the events. You could go in there and be running around for 15 minutes and there's just nothing. You cannot find any events, and so there's nothing going on. So now the adventures will be there. You can always do them. You can always trigger them. And I love that they're linked to leaderboards. That's going, even within your guild, you can see like who is in your guild is the best at this adventure, who has the top score. And as you level up your mastery track and get more abilities through your mastery track, you can also use those abilities to help you with those adventures. So you're just going to go back to them. It's a reason to go back once you have more abilities and get better and better at the adventures.
Yeah, it's a really fun
and
thing.
the leaderboards reward you. There's rewards for the leaderboards for getting to the top of them, yeah.
Nice.
So
What?
more incentive for getting to the top of that leaderboard.
What?
In Maven, I can tell you, yeah, we're I mean, just look at our little crab scuttles and stuff, our little adventures. There'll be some competition, I think, for sure.
Oh my god,
who has
that's
the
gonna be
highest.
so fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because like
Much
they were
fun
like
will be
saying,
had.
yeah, like they're saying how like there's like going to be lots that are going to feature things like transformations or new kinds of transformations. And Peachy, when he like mentioned how they also said they're tying it to the mastery system, so a lot of these adventures you will only be able to do them well if you've actually maxed out certain mastery trees. And this is a brilliant way to provide, you know, end game content, which apparently Guild Wars 2 has none of, because everyone says it has none of. So this is a great way to throw in a nice little kind of like extra kind of, you know, end game content that's not really related to whatever the expansion story or something is, or even like the living story. It's totally separate from that. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
I'm more excited for them now than I was when they first announced them, for sure. I think it's going to be something really, really fun when you just want to go in, because sometimes I go on, you know, I don't want to do a dungeon, or I don't want to do, a lot of big, challenging couple hour long things. I just want to go in. Maybe I want to go in and do an adventure and see if I can beat my high score. It's another, for me, admittedly, I'm a casual player. So for me, I may not ever get to the top of a leaderboard, but maybe I'll try and, go up a couple ranks within my guild, and if I just want to go on one night, hey, this adventure is really fun to me, I turn into a quaggin and I do something, and I just go in and have fun with it, and you can do the ones that are in the open world, you can do them at the same time as other people. So like Ink said, we could go in as a guild and say, okay, everyone's going to do the quaggin race or whatever, and we're all going to go in there and do the adventure and see who gets the best score. So lots of fun. I can see a lot of fun being had with those. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the live show here. Please stay tuned on Twitch here for the post show. But thank you for joining us. If you are watching on YouTube, please scroll down below and check out everybody's YouTube channels and follow us on Twitter. And please join us on Twitch live on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. We would love to have you here. The post show is always a lot of fun. We'll be answering your guys' questions and, I don't know, Moon Alex and legs and the memes that come out of the post show.
I'm wearing shorts today.
Moon, legs are coming out.
Anyway, that's for the post show.
All right.
You've got to be watching live for this stuff, boys and girls.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye for now, guys.